Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Markets to Watch from Smack the Markets for week commencing the 23rd of August. So the biggest event this week is in fact the biggest event this month for traders, and that's the Jackson Hole Symposium taking place on Thursday and Friday of this week. Traders are going to be keeping a very close eye on whether there's any evidence there of Fed policy changes, or indeed if there's any news on when tapering is likely to start. There's quite a high expectation that we'll hear some kind of news on the tapering side of things. So in this sort of quiet period, typically sort of quiet month that we've had through August, there's been quite a bit of focus being put onto this this event. So it's a good idea perhaps to keep an eye on that, and it may well create a fair amount of volatility towards the end of the week. Let's have a look at a few markets here that we're keeping an eye on in the trading room this week. If we take a look at the Dow, you'll see here that the Dow has had a good rally towards the end of last week after the sort of fairly reasonable sort of sell-off here. Many sort of commentators were sort of predicting that this was the beginning of the end of this sort of bull trend. It may well be, but at this moment in time, this sort of rollover, this sort of single top, doesn't look like a topping action. We would expect to see some sort of attempt at least to retrace towards the old highs, and that's what we've started to see already. Now if we just have a quick look through the other indices and then we'll come back to the Dow. If you have a look at the S&Ps, we can see that the S&Ps are looking extremely sort of similar. The one warning sign I suppose here is that all of these markets, the Dow and the S&Ps, did take out the previous low on the daily charts, but those weekly charts are still intact. You know, if we have a look at the weekly, for example, you can still see that we've got a very solid long trend forming here. It's worth noting that many analysts are expecting any kind of drawback to be held more towards the autumn. So typically we have sort of probably October time is the sort of time that we would expect from history anyway, some sort of deeper retracement. Having said that, you know, that Jackson Hole Symposium could change everything later this week, and that could be to either direction, of course. Things to keep in mind is that the S&Ps, for example, and these are the futures that we look at here, the S&P futures is up against resistance at the moment, and now this is the really last chance saloon here, so we would expect some sort of pullback just from a technical perspective after the strong move that we've had, but actually getting above this, if we see further strength, well then there's no resistance above, so we're getting into clear space there, and the market will be free to move. If we just have a quick look at the Nasdaq here, again let's go straight to the 4-hour time frame. You can see that the Nasdaq is also up against its resistance level, so the highest resistance level that these markets have. So again, any further advancement does push this into free territory. We might expect to see some sort of retracement on these, you know, again in the short term before we start to see again pushes to highs. Let's come back to the Dow, and we can see that with the Dow we've still got a little way to go before we get to that resistance level. So the resistance area here is around 35,250 on the futures contract. In fact, what I would do is I would class that as a bit of a zone up to around 35,300. So 35,250 to 35 sort of 300, so that it takes in this sort of cluster of highs through here too, which has also had some previous support. If I zoom into that, you'll see there sort of support, resistance. But nevertheless, we've got a sort of a 40-50 pip range there where there's going to be resistance. If the market can get above there, well, then we're getting into free space and easier territory for the market to move higher. Now we may well, of course, with the big economic event towards the end of the week or the second half of the week, this may well be a bit of a catalyst here for these markets to sort of drift until we get that news. So let's go and take a look at the metal markets. Now metals, again, gold particularly has been pegged underneath this 1800 level here for, well, pretty much all of last week. So it's quite a significant price point here on this market. If we zoom out, you can see the resistance. To me, the longer that the market is actually held here, the stronger it's starting to look. And it's starting to sort of build up momentum here and build up some strength, and we may see the market sort of push through that 1.8 level. Having said that, considering it's been drifting sideways for a whole week now, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we start to see maybe this continue to drift until we get to some sort of economic event, maybe towards the end of this week, that may well be the decider of which way this market goes. And it's got potentially quite a powerful move and potential distance to move either side and either direction if this market goes, or when this market goes. Similar, if we take a quick look at silver, you'll see that silver again is starting to find a bit of support around here. I was looking for support around 23,000, and the market is starting to perform that. Having said that, from technical perspectives, these are still within sort of short trends, but you're starting to see evidence of divergence coming in now on these daily time frames. So let's come and take a look at the currency markets. Now, a lot of these currency markets are a little bit sort of sore at the moment from the battle that's been going on with the US dollar. If we take a look at some of those that I think are going to be, if we just take a look at the likes of ones to keep an eye on, like dollar CAD for example. This market, again, from a trend perspective, it's looking long. We're getting those pullbacks at the moment. Strengths and weaknesses today are not supporting this market long at the moment, but again, look for support coming in on these markets. If we start to see turnarounds, then there could be some decent moves again to the long side, so just be aware of that. Dollar strength, this would be a dollar strength play, of course. Now, another market that I'm quite liking the look of here is that Swiss yen. Again, if we start to consider sort of strengths and weaknesses, the Swiss yen is being supported here to the long side. And if we just look at the longer term perspective of this market, the monthly chart is sort of breaking out into, after a long term consolidation here, it's sort of breaking out above its resistance level and starting to form a long trend. If we take a look at this on the weekly chart, you can see again with the weekly that we've got generally a long trend with higher lows forming as well. And again, if we start to come to the daily time frame, you can see the sort of general pattern that this market moves in. Sideways consolidation for a long period of time, big breakout, sideways consolidation for a long time. We're still well within that consolidation, but the things that I'm quite interested in here is that the market here has made these lows. Look at these candles. Exhaustion candle here as the market tested the low, exhaustion candle tested to the low, same here again. Each time these markets have tested these lows, it's moved up to the top end of the range. In fact, recently just sort of broken above and started to make a little bit of new high. The market's come back under again. It's put in a double bottom here. Again, we've got strength in the momentum indicators, so we could look for a move to 120.5 to start with, and then if we see strength above there, which could be starting to help this to move to the long side. So again, if we come down to the lower time frames or the sort of mid time frames, this is the 4 hour, you can start to see that we've started to put in a bottom here in price action. So we've got what, sort of 4 or 5 tests there to the low side. Each time we've had divergence coming in where we've had strength in momentum. The market's moving in the right direction now, so it's breaking out above the high of this consolidation, this sort of more sideways consolidation on the 4 hour time frame. And the lower time frames are starting to trend rather nicely now, with nice trend structure and nice market geometry as well. So we're certainly keeping an eye on Swiss yen, looking for intraday opportunities, and the setups that we'll be looking for will be mainly on these lower time frames. Now, of course, looking at the bigger picture here, if there's some opportunities on lower time frames, then we could start to nibble into some swing positions here and maybe sort of holding some of those for the longer run. So there's a few markets there that we're sort of keeping a close eye on going into the beginning of this week. I certainly hope it helps and look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye for now.